Good evening. We call to order the regular meeting of the West Valley City Council. We note that we have a quorum present. All council members are in attendance. We'll begin with an opening ceremony. We go to our council member, Lars Nordfelt.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I invite all of us to stand now and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just turned into her.
Next, we have our minutes of February 25th. A motion on the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes of February 25th.
Second. Any comments on them? Looks like they're okay the way they are. All in favor of approving the minutes of February 25th, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Passes unanimously. The minutes are approved. Next, we have a public comment period, and I need to do a couple of explanations here, so if you'll bear with me. I believe that many of you are here to speak on an item later on our agenda. There will be two public comment periods. One is unrestricted, and the other is restricted. So if you're here to speak on the issue of the application that will change our residential housing, allowing some higher density, the transit-oriented development, the lighting standards, and those, which I think many of you are, and I understand I've gotten some calls from the Chesterfield area, then that is a separate hearing, and that one is restricted to that issue. Before we go there, we always set aside up to a half an hour for an unrestricted. So we'd ask those who are going to speak to this other issue to wait. We'll have that public hearing open. But if you're here on other issues, which is allowed, you can come up in our public comment period. We've had a couple of people who signed up, but I think that most of them there aren't very many. It looks like there's just a couple. Because I think Julie is for the later one, right? And so Randy Moon? Moore. And are you also on that issue? Okay, we'll have you wait. So is there anyone else? Mr. Markham, are you, and is yours for this or later?
It's for now.
For now, okay. If you'll go ahead and come up, so that the rest of you are aware, in our public comment period, it's not a debate. You speak to the mayor. It's not personal with the council members. It is your chance to share your opinion. Don't expect question and answer or debate type situation. So, your issues.
5-star. Thank you. And this is going to be novel for me to all of you, but I want to stand up here and thank the council and all of the staff for all of the time and effort they put into everything. And as I sit back and I listen to the staff and their support people talk about programs, I can't believe the level of expertise in which I hear coming out of their mouths. I mean, they seem to know every little nook and cranny about everything they're talking about. And it was explained to me last week, or a week before last, that's just part of the job. I think that's above and beyond the part of the job, is that you can field any question that may be thrown at you from anybody in any way. So I just want to thank everybody for the time and effort that they put into it. I've been involved in some committees and different things and clothing associations, and it's tough. You can't please everybody. And it's impossible to please everybody. I think being up there it's a thankless job that you have, and I'm glad you all volunteered to take it, because it's no fun to be criticized all the time and for everything you do. The only time I've ever noticed a little funny thing happen is where some of the staff, when they stand up in front of the council and they say how pleased they are to be up here and to be in front of you. I think where I always sit off to the side, I always notice a little bit of Pinocchio action going on standing up there in front of how happy they are. So, but like I said, I appreciate everything you guys do, and I think you do a great job. And you all know I've been critical of a lot of stuff that the city has done, and I still don't agree with everything that happens, and you don't agree with me on most things. But that's kind of what makes it all work. Thanks.
Thank you. Was there anyone else here to speak in our general public comment? Seeing none, we'll close that. Mr. Isaac, any comments?
No, sir. Thank you.
Council members, anything before we get into the meat of our meeting? Okay. With that then, we will now go, this will be item 7 on our agenda, and this is what I think most of you are probably here to speak about. So first, there's some parts we have to take care of, and we'll do that with an introduction. The item on our agenda is application ZT-17-2019 filed by the city. This is a zone text change to amend criteria to determine whether a property is eligible to be rezoned to RM, some parking lots, lighting standards, and multi-unit residential design standards. In conjunction with that, we will consider ordinance 20-13 of our municipal code. Requirements applicable to multi-unit residential developments. As a part of that, because of the interest, we'll go into a little more detail. We have numerous zones that we have in the city: manufacturing, light industrial, residential in various sizes. RM is one for higher density apartments and the like. Prior to 2015, you could put a higher density unit anywhere in the city. At that point, the council changed and restricted it to properties with access and frontage on major streets. That was 3500 South, Redwood Road, etc. And that is our current law. They are restricted to those locations. But we started to get a lot of requests recently for exceptions to that rule. We had a certain frontage on those major roads was required, certain access required, and people were coming in saying, well, change it for this property so that we can do it differently. And rather than going through accepting these individual exceptions, we recommended an evaluation of it. We put a moratorium on those. Moratorium meaning we wouldn't accept or move forward with any more applications until we had reviewed it all again. Our staff has done a lot of research. We've had multiple hearings with studying this for the council, and we now have this proposal in front of us. So regardless of what happens, if this proposal doesn't pass tonight, we simply continue with what was there before. That moratorium actually ends on March 17th, so it's pretty close. If we pass the ordinance tonight, then that moratorium is automatically lifted and we begin with our new requirements. So what does this do? It increases certain standards for our multifamily housing, including such things as amenities that are required to be placed in an apartment complex, unit sizes, and so forth. It expands the areas where this is eligible to be placed from those major streets and the requirements they have. We added three additional areas. We already had the center zone here. We added the other track stations. There are 3 track stations. Yeah, I guess let's see if we can get that map up. because I think this will be, drive a lot of the comments. And what it was is around those track stations, you'll see some circles, and those circles represent a half a mile. And this change affected those areas within a half a mile of the track stations. No other areas beyond what was already in statute was changed other than these three. And we'll get that map up in a minute as soon as we get everything turned on. These are on?
We're seeing it, yep.
Okay. So if you know the map of the city, you see the one where we're at right now, this track station, our city offices and that was already in that category. The proposal in this particular ordinance is to add those the other three track stations in West Valley. I think many of you, there it is, you need to move that over a little bit and see if you can expand it. I'm seeing it in the back, that's so that we can see it. We have to have a bigger one because it's farther away. Can you move that a little bit across the screen, or? Well, if not, you can, yeah, but I'm talking about the ones they're looking at. Okay, there, that's got it. Okay. So, what you're looking at, if you look at the top of that, that's the 201 freeway up there at the top. That's north. And if you look at the right edge of that map, that's the Jordan River. That's the right edge of the city, or the eastern edge. So the bottom circle there of those four is our city center. That's where we're at right now. Then the other three are the track stations along the tracks line. The one over by the Maverick Center, Decker Lake, I think we call that one, and then the Redwood, which is just off of Redwood Road. Redwood Crossing is the next one up, and then the one in the top right-hand corner is the Chesterfield area. I believe it's called Jordan Trails Station. River Trans, that's right.
In the whole city.
I'm sorry, I'm on the Jordan River Commission, and so I keep getting them mixed back and forth. So what that allows then, in those three additional circles in the upper right-hand corner, that they could request under our proposal in this ordinance, that they could request the RM zoning for the multifamily residential. So that's what we will be discussing. There's a couple of things this does not do that apparently we got a number of calls here at the city offices, and so I will mention those, and if you have issues related to those, we'll take care of those right now. This does not change the current zoning on anyone's property. That zoning stays, okay? So if it's zoned single-family residential, it stays single-family residential. Now, petitions can be made to the council to change those. But, you know, normally we don't like to do a lot of that except for areas that are mainly vacant land or areas that were previously designated in our general plan, like commercial, even though there's still some homes there. That typically occurs on some of our main streets. Second, there is nothing in here that deals with agricultural animals in any form. That's a separate part of our code. Nothing is changing there. Third, about developing low-income, high-density housing. That does not occur unless they go out, a private developer, and actually make purchases and come in and then request maybe that to be changed. For most developments in the city, there have been a few exceptions, and the city has driven those usually, to where a developer will come in and buy single-family homes. It's just too expensive. Once you've got a subdivision, single-family homes, unless you're right on Redwood Road or on 5600 West, no business can, it's very rare they can buy those out and put in high-density housing. Just doesn't happen. Now, Salt Lake City is doing some of that
Happened next door.
because the land down there gets so valuable that it then becomes that opportunity, but not here in West Valley. The only times we've done it, I think, have been times when we've specifically identified here in the city center that we wanted to build a city center, and we went out and for most of that property bought it at the current market value. And that's the other issue, eminent domain. Eminent domain is where government takes people's property. Even in that case, we've had to give fair market value. But we are not doing that in any of this area. We've done, I think now, 3 times. Once they told me once about 30 years ago we used eminent domain. Not familiar with that one, but since I've been mayor, there have been 2 cases. One is currently under discussion, hasn't even happened yet. But we did one here in the city center because the property owner was not available. It was an abandoned building. It was, we made efforts to contact any relatives, anyone associated with this property, and it was a haven for, I'm sorry, the homeless. No one had lived there for a while. Finally, it got so bad we tore it down. We went to the courts and we exercised eminent domain. We still had to pay fair market value for it. But unfortunately, that money just sits in the bank because we could not get a hold of the owners of the property. So, very rare thing to do. And that has only occurred, here in our city center. We're talking about another one that we may do. It also was an abandoned building that had been vacant for a decade or so. And we finally got the owner's permission and we tore it down. We paid to tear the building down because it was in such bad shape. And we're now negotiating with the owner to come up with a fair market value to purchase that, and that's much what we prefer to do, is just say, hey, we'll do that. So there's none of that in this particular proposal. So now we're going to, I suspect not many of you here to speak about the lighting standards. Just a guess, but I don't think you are. We are making a few changes there, and they're pretty minor, to increase the amount of light that shines down. And so with that, we are going to open it up for public comment. What I'll try and do, because there's so many of you, everyone may not have a chance to speak, but if someone speaks, we would request, we can't require, we would request that you not speak to the same issue again. What we'll do is when some issue is covered, I'll just ask, how many agree with that, and you're welcome to do that. We're not trying to limit you, but if it gets to be 11 o'clock, we probably will start limiting you, okay? This is almost as much fun as the night of the chicken ordinance. Now, some requirements, the same way. And here's another thing. Because things can get out of control, we do request certain decorum. One, we ask that you not clap or yell out. Please do not interrupt the person who's at the microphone. We want them to have their chance to speak. And when we ask how many agree, we'd just ask you to do that silently, like raise of hands. It is rare, but sometimes, and I have been in public meetings where it's got out of control. And we've had to, there's even been occasions where we've had to call in law enforcement, and people just get out of control. They get excited and emotional. This is an emotional issue, that's fine. We do ask you to use appropriate language. This is permanently recorded. This is a public meeting. Everything that you say is recorded and on camera. And we are required to keep that forever. Okay?
Freedom of speech.
So just so you know, that what you say will be recorded. And then generally, we ask that you speak to the mayor. We don't want to turn this into a personality thing. And anything else I ought to cover there on the comments or anything? Okay. What we will do then, we'll just, now, I have one more thing. How many are here to speak in favor of this ordinance? Just by raise of hands. Okay. That's what I'm thinking. And the rest of you are those who are here to speak that are opposed.
So opposed to it? Yeah, everybody should raise their hand.
Okay.
Yeah, raise
Everybody
your
should
hand,
raise
raise
their
your hand, raise your hand, raise your hand, everybody.
That just gives me an idea. If there's a lot, we would rotate back and forth, but we'll just
Yeah.
take it and go with it
They
then.
don't know that.
So,
Speaking in stuff.
when you come to the microphone, please introduce yourself by your name, and we ask that you give your address so that if need be, we can follow up and someone can contact you for follow-up. With that then, come forward and
Wow, they need something like that.
Julie Erickson, y'all know where I'm at. I just have a kind of a statement here to say concerning Chesterfield. My grandmother wrote this. It was back in the 1946 issue of a Chesterfield paper. What is the name? Someone change the name of our fair town. What does the name Chesterfield mean to the pioneers of the struggling little community? To me, it represents courage, fine and true, sacrifice joyfully, and willing entered in for the privilege of the peace and contentment that comes with owning of your own home. It represents grand achievements of simple folk, community builders with faith in God, fine women and good men. Chesterfield, through suffering all the pains of a fast-growing community, is a pride and joy to those who helped build it. It represents our hometown, where the desert was made to blossom as a rose, where the skies seem a little bluer and the friends a little truer. It represents a town that holds the faces of the few you've learned to love. Chesterfield is my hometown. And I was going over this, and I heard about this change or whatever, and this was back in 1980, and I'm not going to mention any names, but somebody in the city council said to my family, we ought to take and do an atomic bomb in Chesterfield. To me, it feels like it's coming back 40 years. I hope, I don't have property there anymore, but I do have my strong connection, as you all know. I hope it stays the way it is, and I believe it just needs a little help, which is needed for over 40 years when the city became a city. You guys want to put Chesterfield in the back burner, and it shows they really want your help. They don't want you to take anything from them. You force tracks into the neighborhood, and now it seems you want to force other things and take away what they have built there. And if you guys could just take that into your thoughts, that's what the community of Chesterfield is. It is the heart of West Valley. Unfortunately, they have to pay the city taxes, but we really want to keep it the way it is. Thank you.
thank you. Next, we'd like you to step right up, don't hesitate, let's just keep going.
I thought you had a list, that's why I was kind of waiting.
Oh, now
Should we give those people that are on the list an opportunity first, or should I just
Sure.
go?
What's your name?
I'm not on the list, my name is Richard Beeler.
Oh, no, we'll try and get to everyone.
Okay, all right. Richard Beeler, 2532 Hempstead Street. just wanted to clarify something that you had said earlier. So if we're zoned agricultural and we're over a half acre and we have our 100 points, we have a horse and some other animals. But my next door neighbor, say, doesn't have any animals and he decides to sell to a developer who wants to put an apartment complex or something there. Would they, I mean, how would that affect me as an agricultural with an apartment complex right next to me? Is this just comment or do you answer questions?
Generally, it's an opportunity for you to speak.
Okay.
How does council want to handle that? Do you want to respond to questions?
Sure. They don't.
Huh?
No, they don't.
Yeah. You said yeah.
Okay. Well, and I'm going to spread the joy around a little bit.
Okay.
Councilman Bueller, would you like to respond to that?
Well, they better like living next to your horse.
Well, that's one of my concerns. If they put an apartment complex next to my house,
They better like.
and, you know, we live in a farm community and it smells like a farm community. You know, everybody up and down my street has horses and cows and goats and so forth, and so it smells like a farm, and
And
I'm not sure
my
how that would...
response would be, as long as you and your neighbors want to keep it that way, it stays that way.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
what would be required
Mhm.
is that somebody comes and buys it.
Right,
We have seen this. There's been a lot more farmland here in the past than there is now, and that's because people, as families have grown, the grandkids wanted to sell those farms and subdivide them and make some money. That could happen in Chesterfield, but it's up to you, it's not up to us.
right. But my concern is, I mean, are we gonna all of a sudden be forced to sell our animals or get rid of our animals because of the farm smell or whatever? Go ahead.
So I might need to look at Nicole to have it clarified, but I do believe when they buy property next to you, it's on their deed that they put on the deed that there's farmland around it,
Mhm.
and they know that those smells go with the property they're purchasing. So they can't force you to get rid of your horses. You were there first.
Okay.
And that's, I know that happened on the west side of West Valley quite a bit when they were expanding the center.
The other thing I think we need to mention is that, you know, growth and development takes place. So currently, even if you're zoned agricultural and have several acres, that can legally be developed right now and homes built on it.
Right.
But it's a larger, it's I think a half acre. Mr. Lehman. Or no, not Lehman.
Are you wondering about the ordinance for animals?
Patrick. No, it's,
Oh.
you see, even though it's zoned agricultural, they can just override that and just build homes on it. But there are current requirements, and I think, is that a half acre? Yeah. See, you could, if you have a 2-acre parcel of ground that's a little farm, agricultural, right now you say, okay, I'm going to change, I'm going to put 3 more houses on that property, each of them a half acre, and essentially it's no longer, you know, it's still agricultural, but you have homes on it.
Yeah.
So it seemed like Mr. Isaac wants to chime in.
Well, I think what might be helpful, sir, if you would like, we could have our Mr. Pastry stand with the folks, and he might be able to answer some of those questions in the meeting.
Yeah,
Only if you'd
and
like.
we'll do that. The concern, and this is what might take some time, if we want to answer your questions, but maybe we'll find out how many different questions there are and get the specialist up here to answer those.
Okay,
If
thank
that's
you.
okay?
Thank you, Mayor.
So, but there are, no, we don't change zoning from our general plan, and so you wouldn't do that. So, let's see, is there some of these that were on the list, or?
I'm not on the list, but
Okay.
I'm just going to follow up on this gentleman's statement. My name's Tracy Carter. I live on Derby Street. You can sit here and say that you guys ain't going to force animals out, but let's look at Baker City. Let's look at South Jordan, Harriman, Lehigh, Pleasant Grove, Orem. All these are getting grown, and it's forcing the agricultural out. There's a dairy on 123rd and approximately 50th that was forced out, that big development. You look at the meat company place, Dale T. Smith right there. They're pretty much getting forced out. They had to build fences to keep people from doing it. has happened, and that's what we don't want.
Okay, and many agreeing with that?
Yes,
yes.
We'll follow up on that in a few minutes. Okay. Is there a Wade Wilker?
No, we don't want to say anything. We're good.
Okay, then Tiffany Adams? Okay, I'm just, because they wrote their names down, I'm going to go with them first, and then we'll get to you.
Everybody out here was saying yes, yes.
Alejandro? It got crossed out, so it was probably legible before, but
My name is Alejandro. I live on 2569 South on Chatham Street, and I'm kind of nervous. Well, I wanted to say, like, we want to keep our properties because, you know, like, it's a distraction. I know a couple of friends, like, you know, teenage years, a lot of kids are stressed, suicide and all that, and they come around my house and they say, like, you want to see the ghosts and all that, and you know, it's a distraction for them, so like they can clear their heads and all that. But another thing is, kind of forgot. Yeah, we just want to keep our properties, you know, ride our horses around and all that. Yeah.
okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And here's another one that got crossed out.
We all agree with him, by the way.
Yeah, we all agree on that.
Well, I'm taking that as the same comment again.
Yeah, helps children.
What about the street?
That's not the same.
Okay. Randy, well, let's see. There's another one, but you'll just have to stand up.
You all did a very good job of crossing your names out.
Something like E something R-O-N, first name, and then a C-R-A-R, I don't know. If not, then we'll just start coming up.
My name's Ellen Mortensen. I live on 2552 South Hempstead Street. So I guess what I don't understand, you just started the meeting and said you're not changing the agricultural. People can stay in their home. No one will be forced out of their home. So why do you want to change the zoning? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me if you're saying everything's going to stay the same, then why do you want to change the zoning?
There are pieces of ground that can be changed and are available for expansion. In other words, we have general plans for how the city grows, and there are parcels of ground, and in fact, I think on this map, well, what we'll do is I'll have our specialist point that out.
I know where the vacant pieces of land are, but what you're saying is that the vacant pieces of land, you want to change the zoning so that they can be made into high-density housing, probably?
Could be, does not require it.
Is the purpose of doing high-density housing for affordable housing, is that what you're saying? Because the area now is affordable housing.
Yeah,
Apartment buildings are not.
they're not.
For the average person, they are out of reach. What's there now is actually affordable.
Yeah, it is my concern right here is investors, they come in, they buy land from us. I live in Chesterfield, okay? And if this application, we pass it tonight, they legally can apply to build a density apartment complex or condos. And that will take away from what we are thinking right here tonight.
Right, if the zoning thing passes tonight, they'll be able to come in and develop that land and put in high-density housing, which in most cases is unaffordable. I mean, what we have right now is affordable housing. So I guess I was just confused because you started the meeting saying pretty much everything's going to stay the same, yet a zoning change makes it not so. So,
I answer that kind of.
Okay.
I'm not sure I'll do a great job, but, so we're not actually changing the zoning tonight. All we're doing is, in those circles, making it, if a developer comes in, buys land, they can apply to have high-density housing there. They still have to acquire the land, they have to come in and apply, fit all of our standards, and a lot of this is upping the standards of what the size of the apartments or condos are, the outside building structure, the look of that, and the lighting and different things like that, and how many parking stalls per unit size and things like that. So this is not changing anybody's zone tonight. Only if somebody comes in, buys land, and actually applies to change it is the only time it
so
will
it's
change.
making it easier for a developer to buy the land and apply.
Yes, right now, there's certain places, they can only put high density on Redwood Road, 3500, 56. Wide enough roads to take on the extra volume.
So the proposal tonight is an effort to make it easier for a developer to be able to purchase the land and apply to do high density housing.
Yeah, it'll expand the property available around Redwood Road between City Hall and pretty much the far,
Which is what none of us want. Because
Correct.
right now we have affordable housing
Yes.
and we have animals and farms.
right,
And
and
it's affordable where what a developer would propose is not.
right. And you still have the ability to keep your animals and not sell your property unless you want to. And your animals take precedence over a new development. When subdivisions went out west where we have a lot of agriculture, all the home deeds acknowledged that they knew they were building next to farm and they had to accept that there was going to be smells, there were going to be sounds,
Right,
things like that. So
No.
you don't get forced out.
Well, I had a friend who had animals in Draper and she was told the same thing. And then they all got together and said, we can't stand the smell and pretty much ran around. So
And we've
Yeah.
had this,
in theory, that sounds good, but that's not what happens in reality.
well, in our reality, I started on planning commission in '97, and we have not changed that policy in all this time. And I don't see us changing that policy. It's part of our rules and procedures, and so I don't see us changing it
So
anytime
a
in the near
vote
future.
against, I mean, like if we don't want this to pass tonight, which I'm pretty sure most people don't, because we don't want to make it easier for developers to come in and put in a high-density apartment building.
So if we don't pass this in one form or another tonight with the upscaled,
Standards.
standards, thank you. I knew I wasn't gonna have all my words. So if we don't pass it with the higher standards that we want, then it'll go back to how it was before we started increasing, and we don't want that. So some of us don't want the 3 circles added. Some of us want different things. So we'll listen to what you're
It'll go back
saying.
to what now?
It'll go back to how it was before the moratorium, which is lower standards on building materials, lighting, the architectural.
So in any event,
It goes back to how it was before.
for lower standards for lighting, parking lots, that kind of thing, but
Yeah.
And
the
the
main
size of it.
issue is, nobody wants high-density housing in the neighborhood.
Yeah, and it's already allowed on Redwood Road, but not beyond. If it doesn't have an entrance or an exit on Redwood Road, it's not allowed. So this would just expand it. And
Is that part of the proposal tonight, to expand it?
And there's some that are for that and some that are against that, so we don't know how it'll roll out after we hear all the public comments.
You know,
I'm against
part of
that.
this is I think we're getting confused. When you talk about affordable housing, currently in the market, for most people, there's none, not even in Chesterfield, period. When we talk about this, there's 2 approaches you can take. You can say, and remember now, the city doesn't buy and sell these properties to developers. You do. You're the people who sell the property. If you don't sell your farm, you keep it. What happens is that the property becomes valuable and they start selling. That's what's happened all over this city. Thousands of acres of farmland have been converted into subdivisions and into apartment buildings. That pressure is there. Now, you can approach it one way and you say, well, we'll just wait and see what people do, or you can try and manage it to limit locations. But the money, we've had people come in here and literally yell at us because they say, you've got to let me sell this property. You've got to let me develop it because I can make money. It's my retirement. It's my inheritance to give to my children.
Go somewhere else.
That pressure is very real. Should we prevent them from doing that? We try not to prevent it, but we do try and manage it. And so there are ways you can manage it, and that's what we're trying to do. The pressure, if you look at Salt Lake City, what's happening? Have you seen the apartment buildings going up? Hundreds, thousands of apartments in apartment buildings. And the reason why is because the demand is there, and those who have the property are selling it.
But the first step towards that is what's going on tonight.
Yes.
I mean, if it stayed the way Chesterfield...
We are expanding that opportunity.
You couldn't sell it for those purposes if it stayed the way it's been
Yes.
on the master plan prior. So
And
the
so
first
the
step
question
towards...
is, what is the role of city government? Is it to prevent from people from selling their property?
No, they can still sell it, but keep it in the same vein as they've had it. I mean, you can still sell it.
And the argument has been made many, many times. And I'm going to make one more statement, then I think I'm going to change. And we're not going to make it question and answer because there's too many people who won't get to speak. We'll save that, but remember, and I've had people come in here and say, you must keep that a farm next door to me because I enjoy it. I want that green space. I like seeing the horses there. Now, I built my home on this farm piece, but don't you let anyone else build it on theirs because that's what I want. And I say, if that's what you want, you buy the property and you maintain that.
Okay. Just the last comment,
Short time.
you know, is that it's not preventing someone from selling their property to not change this. Because, you know, if it stayed the same as it's always been, you can still sell your property. It just has to be one house per half acre, as it's been before, which isn't preventing anybody from selling their property. You know, most people don't want apartment buildings right next door.
Okay, well, no, we need to kind of set some more ground rules here. We're not going to hear from everyone, and I've realized I've almost turned it into a town meeting, not a council meeting. So we're going to go back to original. We'll allow council members to have an opportunity to speak afterwards. If there is a question of clarification, we will only allow our staff member to answer that, not me or the council, and we'll have our chance afterwards. So what we're going to do, we're going to let you have so come up. If you have a question, I'll try and note it, and we may have our staff member answer that immediately, or we may hold it and have him come up and answer a series of questions.
My name is Jeremy Furbish. I've been a resident of Chesterfield since 2011. I live at 1391 West Parkway Avenue, at the corner of Derby and Parkway. I appreciate everyone's kind and humble nature in breaching this topic. And the question for me is this going to, this is a rhetorical question, I'm not expecting an answer, and I think it's a question everyone here needs to ask themselves. Is this going to allow our neighbors to more freedom, or is it going to constrict them? I know I don't want to restrict Bud or any of my neighbors from being able to sell their property if they need to do whatever they need to do with it. You know, and it seems like you guys are taking appropriate steps to allow people to be more free with their property, which I think is to be commended. So, as the document, if the changes to be made states that there is no eminent domain happening. People will only change, they can apply to change the zoning if they want to further develop their property. So I think everyone needs to understand that this seems like it's going to create more freedom for those that own property in the neighborhood currently, so that they can sell their land, and it might be easier for people to develop it if that's what they need. As a well-known anarchist, I don't believe in zoning at all. I don't think you guys should be telling people what to do with their property. I don't care if you're building a nuclear reactor next door to me, as long as you're not polluting my space. So thanks for your time. I appreciate all your work.
Okay, yes. Just, in fact, if you want to start, we'll be ready to wait for the next one. Go ahead.
Okay, so no questions, just comment. I've lived in West Valley my whole life. Debbie Beeler, I live at 2532 South Hempstead Street. I've lived here since it was Granger, so a long time. And I've lived in neighborhoods. I've lived in a bad neighborhood. It wasn't too great of a neighborhood across the street from Granger High School. And I lived there for 28 years because I loved my community. Then I moved to Gateshead, brand new community, built my home, picked out the colors of my walls and the colors of my carpet. Lived there 5 years. I hated it. The crime is high, so high in this beautiful area. And not only does everybody get to tell me what to do with my property, they get to tell me what to do with everything on my property. Think ahead before you do an HOA from someone who doesn't like that kind of thing. So we put in horse property. We wanted to be able to have a horse for our grandkids. Put in horse property. First thing that came up was in Riverton, $625,000. Well, we're little folks from West Valley. We can't afford that, even if we sell this thing on Gateshead. So we keep looking. Something comes up, $225,000, Chesterfield. I know what Chesterfield is. I've lived in West Valley my whole life. I looked at my husband, do you really want to live in Chesterfield? That's pretty bad. You sure we want to do this? So we did our research. We walked over to the area. We walked around day, we walked around night. We knocked on doors, we talked to people. I agree that there has to be development. I agree there has to be places for people to live. But having the same kind of community, the same kind of home, and the same kind of high-density apartments throughout the city is not a plan that will work. We're on the Jordan River. We don't need high-density apartments by the Jordan River. We need half-acre, and I agree with what Ellen said, sell your half-acre. But you know what? The law in Chesterfield is, it's a half-acre. Put a house on it, put a horse on it. It's a half-acre. There's nothing wrong with having a part of our beautiful city be half-acre lots. What's wrong with the place that you can say, hey, we have an agricultural part of West Valley City where you can actually still own a horse. Can't say that about Salt Lake. Soon you won't be able to say that about any other place around here either. I'm not saying that people shouldn't sell their land, but I'm saying when they sell that half-acre in between me and Ellen, who has a few of my neighbors who happen to be horses, and somebody will sell it, just like you said. They're going to make a lot of money on it. And they're going to throw up high-density housing, and I'm going to have all those neighbors, which, hey, whatever, but you guys should honestly just come drive down Parkway and see the fact that we can't handle the traffic on Parkway because of the mosque on Friday. Not that the mosque is a bad thing. I love the mosque there. It's a beautiful building, and we love the people that go there. But because of that high density for that one building, on Fridays, you can't drive on Parkway without getting run over by a BMW.
Yeah,
so,
what about the school?
The thing is we like our, and I realize that you don't, and I don't know how many of you have ever been to Chesterfield. I mean, it looks like, I've had it described as a lot of things. I've heard it described as Little Mexico. I've heard it described as a little western town. But my neighbors on all sides of me speak different languages, have different religions and different beliefs, and my crime rate is low, my neighbors are awesome, and it's because we have a half-acre, we have our house, we have our space, and I just don't understand why that little piece of Chesterfield just can't be zoned half-acre lots. You guys have the right to do that, right? You're the city council, you can go ahead and say, the Chesterfield is going to be half acre lots, and whenever you build high density somewhere else, it has to be at high standards. It's not one or the other. So you're saying, if you don't make Chesterfield zone this way, then nobody else is getting great housing. The housing we build will be with lower material. No, we know that we have the ability to separate those things. But that's just my thing. If you haven't been through Chesterfield walkthrough, stop and ask anybody in there how they feel about the place and what they need. And if you need something, I can guarantee that they're going to give it to you. Thank you.
I may agreed with that statement. Okay. So proceed. And then the next person will come up, be ready.
I'm John Sanders. I live right in the middle of Derby Street. Yeah. And everybody knows me, and everybody's here for the exact same thing, and you guys know what we're here for. I know there's that 50 acres right there on Crystal Avenue. You guys want to build on there. Somebody wants to build there. If it turns to be, and just one question first, how many apartments are you going to put on these places, on these half-acre lots? Well, there's no number. They can build all they want. Can they make them 10 stories? Can they make them 4 stories? Those are things I'm very interested in. There's a lot there, but if you build back there and build them things like they're building in Salt Lake, man, you just ruin our little neighborhood. You know, we drive out of this concrete jungle into no sidewalks, no curb and gutters. It's like driving down into southern Utah in your home. Got a horse, got cows. We love our place. If you're going to do anything with that, maybe you could take everything on this side of Redwood Road. I see no reason to do anything on that side of Redwood Road. And I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but you know where every one of these people are at. And we all live there. That's where we choose to live. Whether we got 1, 2, a half acre, whatever. But that's where we want to be. We don't want you to change it, please.
Thank you. Agreement on that?
Yeah.
Okay, next person. And whoever will be next, please line up.
I'm not really good at speaking, but
That's okay.
I'm Margie Wilker, and I live at the end of Southgate Avenue. My husband and I moved out here in 2006 from Cottonwood Heights. We were looking for a nice little place, still close to the city, but something that was country. It's like the Old West there. Same thing, all of my friends were like, you're moving where? But we love it. You talk about apartments, you're going to bring in more crime, there's going to be more drugs. Chesterfield, since we've been here since 2006, has really done a major turnaround with cleaning it up. We live by that drug house, it used to be a drug house, it's cleaned up. I mean, there's been a lot of places that have cleaned up, and if you talk about lower standards or whatever, give people more money or grants to clean their places up if that's what you want. But putting in high rises, I think you just bring in more traffic, like she was saying with the roads. The school too brings in a lot of traffic. It's not big enough. And it is the Old West. It's fun. It's nice to be in a little place. And as far as eminent domain, Trax took a 1/4 acre of ours. I mean, they had to pay us, but that was turned down, and they still came in and took it. We have some good friends in Riverton, Mascaros, came in because people complained about the smell, and they've been there forever, took their place, kicked them out of the way. So I see you guys doing the same thing, but I think you need to take into consideration as well. It's a nice little place. It's good for people that are on a fixed income. You talk about low, and I'm not saying anyone's low income, so I'm not insulting anybody here, but it's affordable for people, and that's what they need as well. Crime rate, I think you need to think of all of that as well. You talk about Chesterfield being this way, you bring in apartments, you're going to bring in everything. I think it's a very well diversified area, and it's getting better every year. Thank you.
Agreement?
Yeah.
Seems like that's pretty consistent. I may stop out.
Hello, my name is Stephen Lopez. I'm at 2541 South Hempstead Street. I'm a relatively new resident to the neighborhood. But some of the things that strike me when people began speaking about opening up to high-density residential areas, factors such as people have brought up as traffic. For every high-density residential building, there's going to be that equivalent number of vehicles that are going to be there. Multiply that by iterations and suddenly all the roads are going to be clogged. It will drastically change the nature of the neighborhood. In addition to that, in terms of infrastructure, for every high-density building, we're also going to have that additional amount of water resources and sewer resources that need to be allocated for those buildings. That's going to have a rather large impact. As well as people spoke about pollution. You're going to have noise pollution, light pollution, and that is going to drastically interact with those farm and animal communities that have already been established there. So I think before it's opened up for that high residential development, it really needs to be taken into consideration the people that are currently there and the animals that are there, as well as the spirit of that community. One of the things that struck me the most about living here in Utah is the emphasis that's put on throughout the development for agriculture, for parks and trees. I'm unfortunately one of those people from California, came from a very high density community, and one of the driving factors that's made me want to make this my permanent home is the fact that there is an emphasis on maintaining the agricultural beauty, parks downtown, and also the neighborhood that I now call Chesterfield, that I feel I'm a part of too.
Next.
Yep, we're gonna make it happen.
It's all about the same. Everyone agrees, so.
Tiffany Adams, I live on Chatham Street, and I just wondered if at some point somebody will point out where the possible high-density areas are going to be. And also, he mentioned the traffic. There are no other outlets out of there. If we ever had some major emergency, you can only get out going west. And I just feel like if we were to have high density, we could get locked into the neighborhood if there were ever an emergency situation. But anyway, I just wondered if there would be anybody pointing out where the potential high densities are, and is a half acre the minimum amount that somebody can build on? Thank you.
Next person. Don't hesitate, you can come right up.
I'm waiting for the usual hand raising. It seems to me, seems to me we have a consensual consensus of hand raising on the same agreement. I know that I personally am a, if you will, transplant to West Valley. I grew up in South Ogden, and thanks to my better half, I've been in this part of West Valley for a good part of 20 years. I spoke recently of a drainage problem with Mr. Hunt here. I don't know if he personally did anything about it. I would like to think he did, because shortly after I asking or inquiring of it, it was altered to a better situation. But more to the issue of, I know that my daughter goes to Ritz Charter High. And in the process of her going there, she came out of her shell, thankfully. It is an agricultural type school. A lot of people have, oh, it's a farm school. Excuse me, part of West Valley is agricultural. You can't help but come to terms with that, whether it be the sounds, the whistles, the scents, the odors, what have you, all of that comes with farming. The old cliche, if you don't like the cooking, get out of the kitchen. It holds true. There are times I don't like it. but at times it's home. It's a place to rest my head. I work 6 days a week at 2 jobs. Now, my wife and I thoroughly enjoy this area. We also help her dad, which is part of Chesterfield, with the red brick homes. It's a newer Chesterfield area. We live in the, down on 2339 South Derby Street, with all the, next to the condos and the apartments, the duplexes. We enjoy it here. We like it here. We want to keep on enjoying here. But I know that as the earlier statement from Jeremy Furnish, that the moment that you bring in density homes, it is going to change part of the landscape. There is no question on that. It happens no matter where you're at. I don't care if you're in Ogden or New York. It doesn't matter. It will happen. The people here seem to be on a common consensus that keep it as it is. If they don't like the farming, either don't move in or move out. Now, I enjoy the people that I've come in contact with here. I enjoy them. I enjoy the company. But if you don't like it, there's the door. We enjoy it. We want to stay. Thank you.
Oh, what was your name again? I'm sorry.
Rich Nichols.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Carrillo. We're fairly new to the area. We just bought our property 2 years ago, and I think that was one of the reasons why we bought the property. We actually fell in love with it. You know, people ride their horses out there in the summer, you know, out on the streets. They go, my husband owns a few, and my son, my 10-year-old and him, they go work the horses out to the Jordan River. You know, they're out, they are able to ride to, the, you know, around the street. And so if you guys start building, then there's going to be more traffic. It's not going to be safe. Maybe, 2 years ago, there was a bad accident down on Draper, or where somebody riding their horse alongside the road got, you know, killed. So, you know, that's a big concern. We're about to build our house there. You know, like I said, we're barely new there, but so far we love that place. That was one of the reasons why we were looking, and there is no more places to, you know, where you could have your horses, and being able to get on your horse and just ride out to the street and into the river, that's even better, you know, and helps my husband. You know, he works hard. This is his way of, you know, coming home and taking all the stress. So I'm excited to start building my house this year, you know. So when I heard about this, I was like, okay, let's just, you know, see if, you know, that's why we're here, you know. That's just our main concern. People ride out on the street, you know, once comes summer, you know, they go out there on their horse. So that's another thing, and it is a small place. There is not a lot of exits, so you really have to pay attention to the traffic and, you know, being safe, you know, safety concern kind of, for me at least, you know, for my family, for everybody that rides their horses out there. So that was just kind of my thought on this.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Carla Martinez, 2561 Hempstead. That's basically what I was going to say too, except for another thing. We got the kids out there, and they can run around. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows who's everybody in our neighborhood. And when you get anybody from the outside, and I'll be the first one to know that I invite my family over, they're not used to that. And they take off and start spinning their wheels and doing things they shouldn't in the area. And I want to apologize to my neighbors, because I know that happens. And I say, if we get people in there that don't know our rules, that's what's going to happen. And it's our kids that are going to be at risk. They can walk to school. My granddaughter walks right across the street to school. She gets her, you know, everything she needs to do, and we don't have to worry about it. And when you get all this traffic coming in here, you get people that are going to start building apartments and stuff like that. That's what we're going to have to deal with afterwards. Accidents and our kids getting hit, our animals getting hit, because unfortunately sometimes they do get out, and our neighbors all look out for each other. 3 o'clock in the morning, I'll get a knock on the door from Ellen, hey, your horse is out. We're out there all together trying to get the horse in, you know what I mean? And the people from the outside are not gonna know how to do that. They're not gonna, they're gonna be accidents, and there's gonna be people killed. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Sean Branch. I grew up in Chesterfield, lived on 1616 West Claiborne Avenue. I'm currently at 2505 South Derby Street. My concern with this whole zoning and stuff is you're going to take away from a lot of different issues, like a lot of things that people have grown up to know. I've been here for 33 years. I know that the neighborhood's really good. If I have any issue, I can go to any one of these doors and knock on the door and say, hey, I'm having an issue. Can you be a friend and talk? They'll talk to you, you know. It kind of goes back to, you know, being a proud American. Everybody here wants to be here to do what's right. We're not trying to lose our places. We're not trying to have a bunch of different cars coming in and out and people getting hit. And, you know, like right now, there's kids that can't even walk to school, to the school. It's on the east side of Chesterfield, because of the fact that it's so jam-packed. So if you end up bringing even this low standard housing or high rises, whatever, it's going to make it that much worse. You see what I mean? So the only thing I mean, there's so much that plays a factor in the stuff that you guys are trying to say and rezone and stuff, but all you're going to really do is you're going to create more crime, you're going to create more pollution, you're going to create things that shouldn't even be there. And kind of harp back on, I mean, any kind of emergency exit, I mean, what are you going to do? If something happens bad, you have high rises and somebody goes flying off into the Jordan River because they can't see that at the end of it? Like, I don't know. I'm kind of frustrated. Trying to use my words as best I can. I'm not good with words, but I know you guys are trying to do what you guys are, you know, paid to do and take orders from whoever it is, you know. But all I know is that if you want to rezone something, rezone the west side of Redwood Road from 31 to 21st. If you want to clean something up, I mean, keep the school, you expand the school, make it where the kids could actually, where it's not at almost 100% capacity at that school, expand it, take out those other apartments, put high rises over there, make it look good over on the west side of the road, you know what I mean? Instead of, because if you want to talk about crime, that's where all your crime's at, is on that side. So clean that stuff up. You want to do something good for the community, clean that side of the Redwood Road up, if that's what you really want to do. I hope you guys really take consideration of this, because I grew up, in the 90s, there were stray bullets coming over to Redwood Elementary when I went there because of the east side, or the west side of Redwood Road. You know, we're over here trying to do our own western, redneck, hillbilly, backyard country shit, excuse my language. But we're trying to do our stuff over here when we got crimes from the west side of Redwood Road coming into our neighborhood, stealing our stuff, bringing drugs in, and trying to involve us in it when we don't want none of that at all. We just want to live our homes in life, relax. I like to go out and pet the horse and then calm down if I'm mad, or if I want to get away from the old lady, I'm like, I'm going out to the bar. You know what I mean? Like, the kids are going to like freaking rear, I'm like, nope, I'm going to the bar. It's peaceful, it's therapy. If you go out to 90th South and Navview Corridor, one of the last places that actually have horses out in Harriman, there's a guy out there, Mac Butler, he does therapy with horses. It's the most wonderful thing that you could do. And I guarantee if you ask any of these people behind me, they do the same thing, but only in their own backyard. So they could sit there and have therapy and be able to cope when things do become a little traumatic for them, you know what I mean? Because I know for me, it's helped out a lot, you know. I don't know. I'm just rambling around. But all I know is really consider the fact of rezoning the west side of River Road. You want to make something out of West Valley and make it look good? Do that. Get rid of the crime. Get rid of the drugs. Get rid of all the theft for us. Like, I don't know. Like, my trailer got stolen like 3 months ago, and I know it was from one of those guys over there. Like, driving over there, like, Western style, it's like, bang, bang, give me my stuff. No. I'm just trying to say that clean that side up. Leave us alone. Let us have our stuff. and let us be American people with American freedom and American speech and all that stuff. Just please, clean that side up. That's all I can say.
Thank you, next.
Yep,
Hey, I'm Teresa Furbish. I live at 1391 West Parkway, and I just wanted to address on the map, as we can see, we're talking about butting up against the Jordan River, and we already know that Chesterfield is in a very high flood zone. So just in consideration as we're talking about expanding on higher density housing, just in consideration of the environmental impact, because we're not just talking about the immediate future and business opportunities, we're talking about a global perspective and the environment that not just us but our grandchildren are going to live in. And we've already had flooding issues in Chesterfield, and bringing more building into this neighborhood is just going to increase the risk of more flooding in the neighborhood. So that's something we really need to consider if we're going to do more development. And maybe we need to consider doing some protection in the neighborhood for flood zones and for water passages. And I think it would be important for that Jordan River area to have some protections in place, and maybe that would be a consideration to help our environment and, to just have a more global environmental perspective on that. And I think all of us here who are, at one with the land and with our animals, we also have that sort of feel for the land. And I just wanted to bring that perspective into this meeting as well.
Thank you, next.
My name is Nate Ship. I am a resident of Old Draper. I live on Fort Street, and I sympathize with much of the public comment that's been brought forward tonight relating to way of life. I have 6 horses. I'm one of those that rides down the Fort Street still today. So I get where people have come forward and talked about the Chesterfield area. I am also a former owner of Candlelight Homes, and I was in front of you a couple of years ago when I asked to downzone property that had been entitled with townhomes and asked for the right to build single-family homes. As a responsible builder-developer, I truly appreciate the public process and respect the impact that new growth and change represents. I am the applicant that filed prior to your moratorium on the Decker Lake site. We have been patiently waiting for this process to play out, and we appreciate all of the input that your staff has given and the work sessions that you've had. I've had the opportunity to sit and listen as you have all weighed in and given great comment. A couple of questions or comments for you to consider tonight. Our site falls within 2 of the circles. So I think you've labeled them 1, 2, 3, 4. We're in between 2 and 3. We are west of Redwood Road. We are on Decker Lake Drive, which is a 90-foot cross-section, or excuse me, a 98-foot cross-section. So we are 2 feet shy of falling under your existing ordinance to come and talk to you about the rest of what we would like to do with that property. The Flams have owned that ground for a number of years. They've been responsible for that business park that's been developed there. And we have some great ideas that we would like to bring forward. We recognize that the changes that are in front of you tonight will give us the opportunity to come and discuss with you what that property could be. So as you consider tonight's public input, maybe a thought would be to consider allowing the property west of Redwood to continue with this change. continuing with some kind of a cap potentially for overall density. We love the direction as a developer, so we can understand what we can bring forward to you. And allow us to maybe even consider a change from 100 feet to 98 feet in your right-of-way, so that regardless of where these circles fall, we could still come forward with a new proposal for you on that specific piece. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Angel Carrillo, and we bought a property by 1507 Crystal Avenue. When I was looking for horse property, I cannot afford to buy property down in West Jordan, so it was too much money. It took me about 2 years. I used to ride my truck all the way down every weekend to see if I could find a property down there, and it took me about 2 years to find that property, the one we bought over at Crystal Avenue. When you put a property for sale there, a half acre property, it won't stay that long. It will take a couple days to sell. It will sell right away. My property, the one we bought, it was on the market for 3 days. I was the first one who started bidding on the property. By 3 o'clock, there were like 20 bidders on it. So by 3 o'clock, my agent ended up calling the other agent and said, you know what? If you want to get this property, you have to pay the full price for the property. We have too many guys with cash on it. They will take the property. So the problem, what I see is, I mean, that's a lot of land back there that is empty. I mean, somebody owns that land. So this is, if they change it back to build apartments or condominium. So this is what I think. I don't know. So the value of the property, the land will be more. So whoever owns the land, so they're going to make more money. So, but if they wanted to sell it right now, they could sell it in half acres and build one house on it. So I think that they could sell it right away. They won't have no problem selling the land. But the problem is, whoever owns the land, they want to change this zoning so that way they can sell it for more money. So that's the thing. I mean, they could build a couple more houses on it. They could build, and so that's going to be more taxes for the city. We don't pay much in a half acre. We only pay whatever it is and whatever they charge for one house. So this is my thing. I'm about to build my house there. I already have all my plans and everything. I'm excited because I'm going to sell my other home that I've been living there for 15 years. I'm going to sell that home. I'm going to take my money and I'm going to build my house over there. So I would like it to stay the way it is. The other thing is, I don't know. So I guess whoever builds more than 2 houses and 3 houses, they'll probably lose the horse property or the zoning property on the land if they have a half acre. What about if they pass this law or they pass this zoning? If I sell to somebody else, they will keep it the same agriculture, or they will lose the agriculture zoning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we've been going for a while now, and I'm wondering, maybe at this point, was there anyone here to speak in favor of this proposal? Okay. And what we will do after that is there are, I guess, 3 here. We'll do those 3 just to give some balance. And then we'll say that if you have something new to say that hasn't already been said, we'll invite you up. But if it's the same issues, we'll encourage you not to. We won't say no if you feel you have to. But, I think we've got it much covered. Okay.
Randy Moore, 9691 South Granite Woods Circle. Mr. Mayor, council members, this issue I have has nothing to do with circles, none of the circles. So hopefully just give me a little bit of latitude on what I wanted to discuss. I came to the Planning Commission when I started to research this possible change in the RM zone, came to 3 planning commission meetings, worked with the planning commission. I have been trying to develop a 55-plus designated senior community. I developed one in Hunter Village development that we developed right in the middle. There's been 4 developed in the city, as far as I know. There's the one in the Hunter Village. There's the other one, 48 or 52? 48 west with the old drive-in. If anyone remembers the drive-in, that's going way back. There's a small one east side of 5600 West. And then the most recent is the Majestic Villas, or I've heard of Bingham, the one on 3100 South and 7200 West. All 4, there's no other developments that are a 55 designated development. In process, there's not been one approved for probably 12 to 15 years in the city, since before the recession. Not one of those 4 developments could be approved where they are under the current RM zoning. And I believe that the RM zoning is sort of a catch-all zoning for apartments, townhomes, senior communities, all of those. But unfortunately, it excludes in some cases what may be a very favorable development that the city and the residents would want to see. So what is a 55-plus community? It is a community that is, you cannot discriminate in any way in housing other than age. It's the only legal discrimination. It is a 55-plus community designated that a certain percentage of the large majority must be 55 or older. These are communities for an empty nester, widow, widower, single person living in a home that is a lower maintenance, typically 1-level home community. How does that compare to townhomes? Townhomes typically are in the 10 to 12 units per acre density, and most townhomes, to get that density, are going to go up. These types of the 55-plus communities are 1 level, so the densities are more in the 7 to 8 range. There are parcels in the city that I think would be very favorable and work very well for a 55-plus community that are not on a 100-foot wide road. I discussed this with the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission was very much in favor of making a change to the ordinance, which they, I believe, have passed on to you with their recommendation. My proposal to them and to you would be, could be changed very simply, just to designate in the proposed RM ordinance now. It says that RM zoning must be on either a 100-foot right-of-way or an 80-foot right-of-way if it's 2 acres or less. That's what is in the current RM zone. An 80-foot wide right-of-way is still a 5-foot lane or 5-lane road. It's still a very busy roadway. The 100-foot wide roads are Redwood Road, 2700 West, 5600 West. My proposal was to make a change to include 80-foot wide right-of-ways that would bring out roads such as Parkway to the west, Parkway, 4100 South, 4700 South, and 7200 West. You could make a change. Currently, it's a 100-foot wide right-of-way or an 80-foot wide right-of-way up to 2 acres. The proposal, my proposal would be, or to just add, or a 55, designated 55-plus community with a density of 7 units per acre or less. This would open up those other areas in the west part of the city, and I think encourage these types of developments. There is not one in the city, has not been one or approved for probably the last 12 years. So it's a simple change. It doesn't mean they're approved. Right now, there is no alternative to even bring those types of developments to you unless they're on that 100-foot road. And do you want those developments connecting to a 100-foot wide road? I think even an 80-foot road. It doesn't take parcels that are back in, tucked in. They still have to front on that 80-foot wide road. So all it does is open the possibility, if you want to narrow it and specify as the 55, a designated 55-plus community. I think it would be a great asset to the community. These are developments where individuals sell their home and then take the proceeds and move into those communities. So I would encourage you to keep the recommendation that the Planning Commission worked on and made, and at least give the opportunity for those to come forward. Thank you. Any questions? I know maybe any latitude? Thank you.
Thank you. And I had two more.
Hi, Adam Davis. We represent 3760 South Decker Lake Drive, which is one of the properties within the circle. And we support this ordinance for our property. It's just north of the Maverick Center. This has been a fascinating and somewhat unique discussion tonight, and been very impressed with the folks from Chesterfield and their love for their neighborhood. And you know, we agree that west of Redwood Road, this makes a lot of sense. And I think urban planning dictates that, you know, it makes sense to have density around track stations in the right locations. And, you know, we feel that our site on Decker Lake already has high density apartments surrounding it. And it makes a lot of sense to continue to develop that type of product there. But totally support the idea of this ordinance, the new standards, which will raise the level of the type of product that's being introduced into West Valley City in the appropriate locations. And we feel that our site is one of those appropriate locations and would support this ordinance. So thank you.
I agree on that.
Let's see, there was one more over here.
Yeah, we agree.
Yeah.
Mr. Redwood.
In that location.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you all wanted to talk. Okay, so let's do that again. How many agreed with that?
Yes, on the west side of Redwood.
West side.
West side of Redwood.
Yeah, the west side of Redwood. Okay. Was there one other gentleman that was supposedly or someone?
I agree with him.
Okay. Okay, now, is there anyone who would like to bring up any new issues or additional issues on this? Is there someone who feels that they really have to speak? I'm not saying you can't, but time is going, yes.
My name is Monica Dixon, and I bought the property at 2495 South Chatham Street, which is east of Redwood, 6 years ago because I have animals. And I just got to this meeting, and I want to represent all the people who couldn't come to the meeting from Chesterfield because of work or family issues. There's a lot of us who couldn't be here but that wanted to be. And I'm sure that everything I'm going to say very quickly in 30 seconds has already been said. I don't want curb and gutters, I don't want to lose my animal rights, and I don't want neighbors who will complain about the flies and the smell. That's it.
Yeah, I think a lot of you agree with that. I think I got the message. Any other new issues to be brought up? Okay, maybe then, if the council's okay, I'm going to invite Steve Pastorick up to address some of the questions. Is that okay? Mr. Pastorick, and I think the areas where you probably have some notes on some of the questions, but certainly about will animals be forced out? Will there be changes in that? Let's see. Speak also to the issue of the west side of Redwood Road and the changes that are taking place there. The density that is currently allowed versus the proposed density. Do we want to do that? Okay.
Because
Okay.
he's sleeping.
You want to go? Okay.
He's tired.
I was just going to do it after him, but okay.
Him,
Then,
he wants to sleep.
what we would like to do,
No, the guy over
I
here.
apologize for interrupting, but I'm not familiar with this person, who he represents. Does he work for the city? Does he work for a developer?
yeah, he hadn't had a chance to introduce himself yet. We require that of all our city employees. But at the council has indicated we probably have to close the public hearing portion and bring it back, and then we'll have some discussion probably as a council, and you can find out where everyone is on that. So with that then, I will close the public hearing portion. And Mr. Pastorick, was there anything else? Any other items that you want to make sure are covered? There were a lot of other issues brought up, but they were more along the lines of other issues. Mr. Pastor.
Thank you. Steve Pastrick, so I'm the planning director for the city, so city employee. As far as the animals being forced out, so if you have a property that's rezoned to the RM zone next to an agriculturally zoned property, that doesn't change the neighbor's animal rights. Now, they may complain about it, but it doesn't change their animal rights, and they still can maintain their animals on the property. As far as the density is concerned, so within the circles or the rings that are within the map, there wasn't a prescribed cap or a limit on that. Now, there are height limitations in the RM zone. So in the RM zone, if you're next to buildings that have either 1 or 2 stories, then the buildings are limited to 25 feet in height, which is roughly 2 stories. When you're right at the setback, you can go taller than that, but as you do, you have to increase the setback of the building. So the overall height within the RM zone is 75 feet, which is roughly 6 stories. But in order to achieve that height, if you were next to 1 or 2 story buildings, you would have to increase the setback to accomplish that height. So again, it really, the number of units you can get really would depend on the size of the property and what's next door to it. As far as the minimum, I think there was a question about the minimum lot size. What the ordinance proposes right now, as far as being able to apply for RM zoning, if the property is vacant, you would need at least 1 acre to apply. If it's already developed and you're wanting to redevelop the site, the minimum would be 20,000 square feet, which is just under half an acre, would be the minimum for that.
So can I ask you a question there?
Yes.
So how many units could they put on a half acre? And should it just be like a small townhome development, or could it be?
So there's not a cap, so it really, with townhomes, generally you're going to be somewhere in the 10 to 12 units per acre. So if you're half an acre, it would be 5 to 6. But there again, for a townhome development, we generally see ones that are larger than that, just because you have a homeowners association, and you usually need a certain amount of units to make that really functional. And so 5 or 6 is really small for a townhome development.
Okay. Then would you also, what this change in zone actually accomplishes? What it allows versus what was there before?
Sure. So just to clarify, so this is actually a change to our zoning ordinance. There's no zone that's actually being changed. Maybe just a little bit of history here I think would help. So prior to 2015, in the year 2015, you could ask for any zone anywhere in the city. Didn't mean you'd get that zoning, but you could request any zone you wanted anywhere in the city. It was in 2015 where the council decided to impose some limitations on that, where they say we're only going to consider certain zones under certain conditions. And the RM zone was one of those. And so, as we've discussed, in 2015, the restrictions about being on a major street were put in place. What this ordinance does is just expand those areas where someone could apply, but the council still has their legislative discretion to be able to say yes or no on a zone change. So it simply opens up more areas where someone could apply for a zone, which was, again, that was the standard prior to 2015.
Just one more question. I just want to confirm with you the line number 50. Maybe you don't have that in front of you, but it says within half-mile radius, and you can build for exceed 20 units per acre. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Anything else that you would like Mr. Pastrick to cover? Mr. Isaac?
I just had one question regarding density again. So,
yes, sir.
The Planning Commission recommended that there be a cap of 7 units per acre, and it's kind of a really wide question, but can you give us an idea of what that product would look like or could look like?
Sure.
At 7 units per acre?
Yes, and to clarify, their suggestion was along the lines of what Mr. Moore was saying, is that they were saying along those roads with an 80-foot right-of-way, so like a 5-lane street, that in those instances you could allow up to 7 units per acre. And so, as Mr. Moore pointed out, we have several senior condo developments where they're single level. Again, the one on the drive-in property is in that 6 to 7 unit per acre range. But so the typical is each unit has a 2-car garage. It's a single level. There's 4 units in a building. All 4 of those developments are very similar to that. Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
May I make some comments, Mayor?
Sure.
Well, I don't have any more questions for Steve. I think
Anyone else have?
does. Maybe you could.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pastrick.
Thank you.
I'm an attorney, and it's hard for me to sit and listen for a long time without saying things. But I do eventually get my turn to say something. One thing that I've learned through my years on the council is wherever we draw the line, someone doesn't like which side of the line they're on. And sometimes people on both sides of the line don't like which side they end up being on. But we have a responsibility to plan and to have order and to draw lines. If you look at this map, the black dotted lines are the 100-foot right-of-ways where high-density housing would be allowed under the current ordinance if we don't make any changes tonight, where it would continue to be allowed under the new ordinance if we adopt it tonight. The purple dotted lines are the 80-foot right-of-ways which would be included for some high-density housing under a proposal by the Planning Commission, which I am not in favor of. I think that opens up way too much of the city for potential high-density housing. I also want to add, I believe that on 27th West we have a 55-plus housing development that's being built right now in the city. And I believe that's a 55 plus because I think that's what the sign says when I drive by it. 27th West between, well, just north of the driver's license division property. So those properties are being developed. As a council, we know that Chesterfield is different. We have discussed Chesterfield and wanted to change certain housing requirements and other requirements in Chesterfield. Not that we would change them as they are, but to allow them to perpetuate as they are, to respect the agricultural nature, the different nature, the various housing options that are there, because not everybody's house looks the same, right? It's not a cookie cutter development like you see so much of. We appreciate that. I bristle a little bit at the suggestion that maybe some of us don't know what Chesterfield is. I think we've all been there and appreciate what it is, and that it certainly has a unique status and something that we want to allow to continue. At least, I do, and as I've talked to others, that's what they want as well. We do have a vision. We have an intention to improve our city, to raise the bar. This ordinance requires higher building standards for newer high-density housing that might come into the city, higher than has ever been required before. And we need to balance all of these different interests, and that's kind of the tightrope that we walk. And with those comments, others might have comments too, but I'd like to go ahead and make a motion while it's present in my mind, and that is that we would approve this ordinance with an amendment or two. The one amendment would be that the northernmost circle be eliminated from the ordinance. The second amendment would be that the second most northern circle, the east, almost half of that is east of Redwood Road, be eliminated from the ordinance.
That'd be us. Are we second for that?
Okay. It's properly before us. I do have some comments, though, on some of the items that were brought up, so that you understand. One gentleman said, keep it as it is. And I hope you understand that currently you can't. Currently, it can be increased, not by apartments, but additional homes. Much as we would like to say that we're always going to keep that for animals, there are some natural pressures that are going to change. Within 2 decades, all the land in the Salt Lake Valley will be built out. All of it. There will be no land left. So what happens? The value of the land remaining goes up. And people will start putting pressure on. What happened in Draper, you're right, history will repeat itself. At some point there will be so many people making so many complaints, they'll elect people to this council that say, you've got to eliminate those horses and those cows. Now, it's not going to happen in the next month or two or in the next 5 years, but eventually, someday down the road, once we're gone, it'll happen. That's just history. I mean, I can pretend that there will be council members who will fight that to the death, but they won't stay in office. That's what happened in Draper. It's what happened because the majority rules. It's just, so those farms and pastures, unfortunately, see, I moved out here 42 years ago, almost 43 years ago, surrounded by horse pastures and farms. Now I'm surrounded by subdivisions because the value of the land was too high. And it won't be the council members who make that change. It will be the public. It'll be the public that makes that change. Some have talked about traffic, and I didn't have Mr. Pastorick address that, but we are requiring a traffic study in conjunction with this. But understand that that pressure is the same in every single city in this valley. And the traffic will get worse. Where will your children live if they want to stay in this valley? We will have to find a place for them. People mentioned about the affordability. The reality is that there's nothing affordable. I mentioned that, but there is tremendous pressure being placed upon cities by the state legislature to create more affordable housing and more apartment complexes. It is possible that in the next few years they may take that out of the hands of city councils and actually require it. There have been partial steps in that direction in the current legislature, in the previous last year legislature. That will continue because the pressure is there to have more residences, not necessarily single-family homes, more residences so people can stay here. Those are pressures that are built not by the councils, not by elected officials, but by the public. So I just want to put that in perspective, and so whatever happens with this motion does not mean that Chesterfield will forever stay the same. I looked at my subdivision, and it has changed tremendously in 40 years. It is totally and completely different. Now, my house is the same, my neighbor's house, but our area has changed dramatically. Every field that was within miles of where we were and where we are changed into subdivisions. And a lot of apartments, a lot of duplexes and different things. So just to keep that in perspective, that's not meant to discourage you. It's meant to say that down the road, your children will probably have to address these issues in a different way. But we do have a motion before us. Any comments, further discussion on the motion?
I have a comment, Mayor.
Yes.
I just want to say thank you for being here. It made my heart feel good to see so many people who love where they live. I also love where I live, and I'm proud to be there, and I can see that you are too. And so thank you for being here and showing the support of your neighborhood. I think that's great. And I want to tell anyone who owns land that might be remaining in the circles that we approve tonight that just because we approve this doesn't mean that your property can automatically be turned into an apartment. This just means you can apply. We can turn down an application and we can say that lot doesn't really work as an apartment building, and so we can turn that down. So just be aware that this doesn't make it so you can. It just makes it so you can apply.
In fact, I would just expand on your comment. Not only can we turn it down, we have turned some down.
Oh yes, several.
So.
Yeah, just a small comment. 10 months ago, the council tried to preserve the Chesterfield, and I just want to say thank you to the council here. They worked really hard. They did try to preserve the Chesterfield, and they know that's a very unique community, and just want to say every single one of them is very kind to do that. The second part of the ring right there, the north, and second is the Redwood Road and 2750 South right there. About a month ago, we also passed. We have two maps. One is go forward to Leicester Street. Another one is kind of parallel alongside with the Redwood Road, and 6 council members, they vote for the map number 2. It's alongside with the Redwood Road, and very much the same thing is that the Chesterfield is a very unique place. I want to keep that the way we are right now, and I think it's these people, they're working very hard to try to do that, and I think they're very, very kind of them. Again, I live in Chesterfield, just like all you do, and I know it's a community, very cohesive community. I really like it. People that know each other, knock on the door, talk people, friendly. It's a very good environment, and that the motion we have tonight, that we just let you know, just remind you, it's right here, that the one include in our motion. Only 2 right here, the one right here, the first one and the second one, and we number 1, number 3 right here, number 4 right here off the chart.
Yep.
Okay.
No, that was not quite the motion. Number 3 was split right down the middle on Redwood Road.
West side of Redwood.
Oh, that's
So that the
fine.
west side of Redwood Road is still in,
Yeah.
the east side, which is part of Chesterfield, is out.
Okay, that's fine.
So, just to be clear, if there's property with, property right on Redwood Road, on the east side, that would still be allowed because of the 100-foot right-of-way. I just want to make sure that's clear.
As it is today.
Any further comments?
I think with eliminating Chesterfield from the circles, I can move forward with this. I would like, though, to look into the 55 and older, and I think tonight we just didn't have time to really figure out how many properties that would affect, and if we want a minimum or a maximum acreage, but I would like that in the near future to be decided. And so at least have a discussion on our level too, because I think Planning Commission went to a lot of work and a lot of thought to come up with that recommendation. And the person that made the motion doesn't want to add that. He made that clear with his. So, but I would like as a council to still look at that and not just toss off their recommendation.
Okay. Any further comments?
I agree that we should talk about that in a future meeting.
Yes, not tonight, but in the future.
Yes.
Because I do value the Planning Commission recommendations.
Mayor, before you call for the vote, can we ask Councilman Bueller just to restate the motion, please? Just for total clarification.
Yes.
So the motion was to approve as is with the two amendments, the first being that the northernmost circle be eliminated, and that the portion of the secondmost northern circle that is east of Redwood Road be eliminated as well.
Thank you.
We ready then? To our city recorder for the vote.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu.
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang.
Yes.
Councilman Bueller.
Aye.
Councilman Hume.
Aye.
Councilman Christensen.
Yes.
Councilman Nordfelt.
Yes.
And Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, now, you're welcome to stay. We have some more business to do, but if you happen to leave, it will not be a surprise to us. Thank you very much for that. All right, I think we want to finish up. So even though we're leaving, we're going to go right ahead. Award a contract with Black and McDonald Limited for certain streetlight improvements. This is a $935,000 authorization.
You're on to it. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you.
Gotta get back where we were. And this is to work on changing out 5,775 non-LED streetlights into the LED. So that is the issue before us.
I wanted to come see your house.
For the council.
Yeah, how are you? You don't come over there anymore?
Second.
No, I don't. I don't.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, to a city recorder.
Councilman Nordfelt.
Yes.
Councilman Christensen.
Yes.
Councilman Hume.
Aye.
Councilman Bueller.
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang. Councilman Fitzie Umanu. And Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Next, we have application S-3 2019, filed by Daniel Herzog. This is final plat approval for the Sunset Hills subdivision, phases 3 to 5, at 6600 South Afterglow Lane. This is the one where they've already built those first 2 phases, and this will just continue that. We were familiar with that. Oh, they got the picture up. That's great. Someone's over there. And those will be the rest of that to be finished out. So this is fairly routine for that to be completed. So with that, to the council.
Move to approve application S-3-2019.
Second. Brought forth any further comments? Seeing none, to our city recorder.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu.
Aye.
Councilwoman Ling. Councilman Bueller.
Aye.
Councilman Hune.
Aye.
Councilman Christensen.
Yes.
Councilman Nordfelt.
Yes.
And Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Next, we have an even easier item. Here we have, let's see, this is a resolution, I believe, 20-27, authorizing the city to enter into an easement agreement, temporary construction easement, with Evan and Kim and Roberts at 2730 West, 3800 South. This is another property on the 2700 West project that we have approved many before. We got to be getting pretty close to the end of these, but anyway, to the council.
Move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Any further comments? Seeing none, to our city recorder for the vote.
Councilman Nordfelt.
Yes.
Councilman Christensen.
Yes.
Councilman Hune.
Aye.
Councilman Bueller.
Aye.
Councilwoman Ling.
Yes.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu.